Hi there, coming to you for another week of Bible study this week as we continue our walk through the book of Genesis. Glad to join you again right here at the parsonage where we are holed up these days, teaching our children, or at least guiding them through the schoolwork that the schools have given them, and trying to do our best with that, as are so many other families all of our families all across our area, and many all across the country. I know that we still yearn to be together. I can't tell you how much I miss seeing you face to face, gathering in the chapel on Wednesday nights. I'm just yearning to be there again. And I know you are too. And I trust that by God's grace, we'll be there again. I don't know how many more weeks it'll be, but in the meantime, we won't let that stop us, will we? We will gather around God's Word, and we will enjoy some study time together and allow it to influence our lives and to inspire us to faithfulness, especially in this season. There's no better time to be rooted in Bible study than right now. So I'm really grateful that you're joining and being faithful and watching each week. I know it's a little different on video, but we'll do our very best. I come to you again from the parsonage home. I'd hoped actually to be outside today. It's such a beautiful, God is giving us such beautiful days. And if you think of it, we could have had a ton of gray and gloomy days with spring showers, but we've been given a lot of beautiful days, and it's a good thing because we're able to enjoy them even as we're quarantined and cornered in our homes. We're able to get outside and enjoy these beautiful days. So I had hoped to actually video outside, except that there's doing some street work out front, so it's a little noisy. And of course, folks are out playing in their yards, and you can hear them over the fence, and that's all good. But I tried it out, and I think the video would have been a little bit hard for you to hear. So anyway, on to our Bible study. Many of you, if you have been to Bible studies in the past, you will have likely gotten an email from me today that has the outline for tonight's study attached. So if you'll take that now, open up your email, open up that attachment, and we can follow down through the outline. Pull your Bible out, have it open up in front of you. If you got a candle, light you a candle, just like we would do in our chapel. That'll kind of set the stage for you to open your heart and mind to the Scriptures this evening, or whenever it is you're listening to this. So open your Bible, pull up that outline from the email. Now, if you're just listening to this video and don't have the outline at your disposal, that's okay. We'll just walk right on through. You won't miss a thing. But if you do have that, I invite you to do that. And then on that outline, on the second page there is a prayer that I've included there that I'd love to say together. So will you join me in prayer? Draw us close, Holy Spirit. As the Scriptures are read and the Word is proclaimed, let the word of faith be on our lips and in our hearts, and let all other words slip away. May there be one voice we hear today, the voice of truth and grace. Amen. Truth and grace, that's the voice we want to hear today. Well, we've been walking through the book of Genesis. I'm going to pull my Bible up here. We've been walking through the book of Genesis, and we've been doing that since the middle of January, so we've really been kind of inching our way along. And it's so important to linger on details here because there's really so much richness and wisdom that is laying right underneath the language, the way the stories are told, how certain themes are reinforced. There's all kinds of richness line by line. So it's good that we've been doing a slow walk through Genesis. Remember, every week we talk about how we don't want to miss the forest for the trees. That certainly chapter and verse is important, and we do that each week, walking verse by verse. But you want to remember the grand arc of what God is doing. Do you remember some of the grand themes? I bet if you've been with us before, you might be able to recount a few of them. One big theme is covenant. God is establishing a covenant between himself and between his people. And so the book of Genesis is the recounting of that covenant, and in some cases the rebuilding of that covenant when people have done things to harm the covenant and even destroy that covenant. So covenant is a theme, something that God is trying to keep alive between God and God's people. Another is the promise that God has given to Abraham and his descendants. That is, he will make of them a blessing, he will make of them a great nation, and that they will be fruitful and multiply. Actually, that promise comes from the Garden of Eden in the beginning. Be fruitful and multiply. Covenant. Some of the other big themes of Genesis are that we are learning about God and God's character. God is self-revealing his own character and nature throughout the book of Genesis. God is revealing God's character and God's nature throughout the book of Genesis. So we are learning things about God. This is a lot like other kinds of relationships, and we might be able to draw a parallel there. That as people come to know each other, they begin to reveal more and more about themselves as they think the other party is able to receive it. So God seems to be doing that with the people. God is revealing more and more layers, dimensions to God's character as the people are able to receive it. Now in this case, you have people who are receiving those covenant promises and who are receiving God's revelation of God's self. And sometimes they are trusting God and sometimes they are not trusting God, and they kind of get in their own way. One of the takeaways that we're going to talk about at the end of the study is that lesson that we've talked about in prior weeks, and that is that God has a plan B and a plan C and a plan Z when we mess up plan A. So there's good news there, and we're going to see that good news in the passages that we study in this study now. So those are some of the grand themes of Genesis, and just remember that story by story is very important. So today when we talk about Joseph and his brothers, it's very important to talk about Joseph and his brothers. Also, though, we want to keep our eye on the grand themes that God is weaving through all of the stories. And through this story, like the others, God is weaving themes of covenant, weaving themes of reconciliation. Reconciliation is going to be a big theme during this study. Well, let's get right into it. Last week we talked about chapter 42 quite a bit. We lingered there a while because in chapter 40, 41, and then into 42, I should say, because we talked a bit about Joseph's journey from his time with his family, with Father Jacob, all of his brothers, and then how his brothers got jealous and tossed him in the pit. Slave traders come, retrieve him, take him to Egypt. In Egypt, he is imprisoned. Then he finds some favor in a household. Then he's imprisoned again. He interprets dreams. He gets placed up in front of the Pharaoh eventually. He interprets Pharaoh's dreams. And now he engenders the trust of Pharaoh because he has favorably interpreted Pharaoh's dreams. And so Pharaoh rewards Joseph and gives him a lot of authority and a lot of power. In fact, he makes him the number 2 in the kingdom there in Egypt. So Joseph is carrying out the plans that he shares with the Pharaoh, and those plans have to do with protecting the country against famine. And so it was revealed last week in our readings, chapters 40 and 41, where there would be a famine in the land of Egypt. There would actually be a time of plenty for 7 years, and then there would be a time of famine for a period after that. And so Joseph has this vision and a vision for implementation. He has the dream and he has the plan to implement a time of preparation, that the time of plenty is a time also of preparation. So that's a good theme for us that we talked about last week. The time of plenty is also a time of preparation. It is really our instinct to enjoy times of plenty and abundance and kind of kick back and soak it up and take advantage of that time with sometimes very little thought about the future when times will be more lean. And so this is a lesson for us that times of plenty are also times of preparation. So in what ways do we plan for that? And because the lean times come, the famine comes to Egypt. In fact, the famine stretches over all of the region beyond Egypt, and that's what brings Joseph's family of origin back into play here. See, they're back in Canaan. But the famine has spread there also. It's revealed, though, in chapters 40 and 41 here in the book of Genesis that the Egyptian Pharaoh and Joseph as his number 2 are going to extend their generosity beyond their own borders. It's a good lesson for church also, to extend our generosity beyond our own walls, right? And so that happens, and so people are invited to come and to buy grain that Egypt has stored up in the times of plenty to prepare for the times of famine. And the famine has struck. And so we pick up in 42 where Joseph's brothers, the ones who sold him out before, those brothers are now showing up asking for grain because their famine has spread to Canaan. They've crossed over a border. It was probably about a 2 weeks journey. And they made that probably about a 2 weeks journey to come to Egypt to look for grain for the famine. And they show up in Joseph's court. Now, they don't know it's Joseph. It's been years and years since they sold Joseph off into slavery. They don't recognize Joseph. Joseph is speaking another language. He's speaking to them through an interpreter. They're coming to the number two, the prime minister, if you will, and they're seeking grain. And they don't even know that they're talking to their long-lost brother. So the drama is high. It's very theatrical. It feels that way. The emotions run high. And so I want to reread a few passages that we read last week in chapter 42. So turn there with me if you haven't already. And you're going to hear about the brothers journeying to Egypt. So I might skip around here a little bit, but chapter 42 begins this way. When Jacob learned that there was grain in Egypt, he said to his sons, "Why do you keep looking at one another? I have said that there is grain in Egypt. Go down and buy grain for us there, that we may live and not die." So 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt. See, they are identified as Joseph's brothers. Joseph is the reference point in the story. Isn't that interesting? Jacob is not really the reference point. It's not Jacob's sons. It's Joseph's brothers. Interesting. Joseph is the central character in the story. So 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt, but Jacob did not send Joseph's brother Benjamin with his brothers, for he feared that harm might come to him. Thus the sons of Israel, remember, Jacob sometime back was renamed Israel. It's going to be used interchangeably, Jacob and Israel. Thus the sons of Israel were among the other people who came to buy grain, for the famine had reached the land of Canaan. I talked about that. Now Joseph was governor over the land. That's another interchangeable title. Sometimes we see different names for Joseph's title. He was clearly Pharaoh's number 2 person. Joseph was governor over the land. It was he who sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brothers came and bowed themselves before him with their faces to the ground. And when Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them, but he treated them like strangers and spoke harshly to them. "Where do you come from?" he said. They said, "From the land of Canaan to buy food." Although Joseph had recognized his brothers, they did not recognize him. Joseph also remembered the dreams that he had had about them. And you remember that. That's what got Joseph in trouble in the first place, were these dreams that he was dreaming where his brothers were bowing down to him in the form of grains of wheat. So it's come to fruition. Now, Joseph said to them, "You are spies. You have come to see the nakedness of the land." Meaning, they've come to see the famine from another foreign power. They said to him, "No, my lord, your servants have come to buy food. We are all sons of one man. We are honest men. Your servants have never been spies." But he said to them, "No, you have come to see the nakedness of the land." They said, "We, your servants, are 12 brothers, the sons of a certain man in the land of Canaan. The youngest, however, is now with our father, and one is no more." They're talking about Joseph there. But Joseph said to them, "It is just as I have said to you. You are spies. Here is how you shall be tested. As Pharaoh lives, you shall leave this place unless your younger brother comes here. Let one of you go and bring your brother, while the rest of you remain in prison, in order that your words may be tested, whether there is truth in you, or else as Pharaoh lives, you surely are spies." And he put them all together in prison for 3 days. And on the 3rd day Joseph said to them, "Do this, and you will live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers stay here where you are imprisoned. The rest of you shall go and carry grain for the famine of your households, and bring your youngest brother to me. Thus your words will be verified, and you shall not die." And they agreed to do so. They said to one another, "Alas, we are paying the penalty for what we did to our brother. We saw his anguish when he pleaded with us, but we would not listen. This is why this anguish has come upon us." Then Reuben answered them, "Did I not tell you not to wrong the boy? But you would not listen. So now there comes a reckoning for his blood. They did not know that Joseph understood them, since he spoke with them through an interpreter. He turned away from them and wept. Then he returned and spoke to them. And he picked out Simeon and had him bound before their eyes. And Joseph gave them orders to fill their bags with grain, to return every man's money to his sack, and to give them provisions for their journey. This was done for them. That stops off in verse 25. I'm just going to reach and grab the outline here. So a lot of interesting things happen in that passage. They come before their brother Joseph. They don't know it's Joseph. Joseph remembers those early dreams. There are a lot of poignant verses here where Joseph's emotions come over him. Did you catch in verse 24 that Joseph turned away from them and wept? Then he returned and spoke to them. That's not the last time that Joseph is going to be overcome by emotion because of seeing his brothers once again. Joseph clearly does not fully trust the brothers, and so he makes this deal with them concerning the food and the grain and the brothers and all the rest of that. We learn more in these passages, verses 21 and 22, about the episode way back of being thrown in the pit. Apparently, Joseph was expressing his anguish to his brothers while he's down there in the pit. And they did nothing, and they remember the anguish. Even Reuben, who tried to intervene back then, Brother Reuben says, gosh, we've got blood on our hands, y'all. He's reminding his brothers of what he said way back then. So we learn more and more about their abandonment. It's quite striking, actually, for them to recall details like that way on years later. There's this interesting question here, though, that we're left with after this section that I just read. And that is, Joseph is, the text says, quote, testing the brothers and their honesty. But it's curious, isn't it, though? Is Joseph testing them in the way that we think? The brothers certainly think that he's testing, that the king or the governor, they don't know it's Joseph, but that leader is testing them. Perhaps the story is in some ways reflecting their perspective, that they are being tested. You see, they are viewed with suspicion by Joseph. And even though they don't know it's Joseph, they are viewed by suspicion. They're accused of being spies. And so they think they're being tested. But we know that Joseph knows that they are not spies. We know that in the passage we're about to read, we know that Joseph actually sends them back. He holds on to Simeon, but he sends the rest of the brothers back. Sends them with grain, so they're able to take food back, just exactly what they came for. But he also puts money in the grain bags. He doesn't receive money for the grain. And then he gives them provisions. So Joseph is actually very benevolent with his brothers, even though, again, they don't know it's Joseph. And then when they return, wondering what's going to happen to them, Joseph relieves them of their guilt. We'll get to that a little bit later on. The driving motive here for Joseph is that he gets to see Benjamin, his younger brother, that he gets to hear the news about his father, Jacob, and to know if his father is still alive. That is the driver here. So Joseph's got to come up with some kind of scheme, some kind of plan to learn those two pieces of news. He wants to see Benjamin. He wants to know if his father is alive. And he can't hardly do that unless he has some kind of a leverage. And the leverage he's got is that they are hungry, they want grain, and so even though they are given grain by Joseph, he can't help but give them grain. He still holds Simeon back, so he knows they're going to come back for their brother Simeon. It is interesting that even though Joseph was mistreated by these brothers, he does kind of trust that they're going to come back for their brother. You kind of wonder if Joseph doesn't understand that maybe they have learned their lesson. Or maybe that he'll learn once and for all whether or not they really care for their own kinfolk. But one way or another, we have this ordeal. It is this spread out ordeal with Joseph and the brothers and with the father. And you get the sense that the ordeal is needed. There needs to be, call it a testing period or call it a trial, a journey. An ordeal is needed in order to bring the brothers to a deeper point of reflection about the responsibility they hold for selling Joseph away. I said in the outline, ordeal maybe is needed in order to bring the brothers to reflect more deeply on their guilt, bring memories to the surface, reckon with their actions, so that reconciliation is possible. And isn't that true about reconciliation? Reconciliation between two parties cannot really happen in the deepest way unless there is some bit of reckoning, some time spent to reckon with what has come to pass, what sort of the water under the bridge looked like back there. Not any kind of meaningful reconciliation, I should say. Not any sort of Christian or spiritual reconciliation really happens unless you do a little bit of a autopsy on what's happened in the past, Let's talk about this. Here's what happened. These brothers are feeling guilt by it. Are we responsible? What is God doing to us? They're asking all kinds of theological questions here. They have a lot of mystery and wonder about this. And you just get the sense that this drama needs to play out in order to give the brothers a little time. If Joseph had just dropped everything and wrapped his arms around them in the beginning, makes it feel a little cheap, doesn't it? Makes you wonder if really a deep reconciliation is really happening here. They just showed up saying, hey, we're hungry. Hey, guys, it's me. It's Joseph. Come give me a big old hug, Would they have learned everything they needed to learn? Probably not. So Joseph, even in his wisdom, elongates this out. Sends the brothers, keeps Simeon, sends the other brothers back. Simeon is the leverage to get them back. And he wants to see his younger brother Benjamin, and he wants to know if his father is alive. We're going to see in the next little passage that we read here, let me reach down and get my Bible, we're going to see these passages where they are struggling with theological questions, and I'm going to talk a bit about that. We're going to pick up in verse 26. So they loaded their donkeys with their grain and departed. And when one of them opened his sack to give his donkey fodder at the lodging place, he saw his money at the top of the sack. He said to his brothers, my money has been put back. Here it is, my sack. At this they lost heart and turned trembling to one another, saying, what is this that God has done to us? When they came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan, they told him all that had happened to them, saying, the man, the Lord of the land, spoke harshly to us and charged us with spying on the land. But we said to him, we are honest men, we are not spies. We are 12 brothers, sons of our father. One is no more, and the younger is now with our father in the land of Canaan. Then the man of the Lord of the land, said to us, by this I shall know that you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers with me, take grain for the famine of your household, and go on your way. Bring your youngest brother to me, and I shall know that you are not spies, but honest men. Then I will release your brother to you, and you may trade in the land. This is all, you get the sense that the brothers feel like they got to explain all of this to their dad. Because look, they're already responsible for Joseph. They know that. Even though dad doesn't necessarily know that, Daddy Jacob, they feel responsible for that. So they're recounting every little piece of this transaction. Verse 35, as they were emptying their sacks, there in each one's sack was his bag of money. When they and their father saw their bundles of money, they were dismayed. You see, now they're concerned that they're not only being accused of being spies, but that they're also going to be accused of being thieves. When they and their father saw their bundles, they were dismayed, and their father Jacob said to them, I am the one you have bereaved of children. Joseph is no more, and Simeon is no more, and now you would take Benjamin? All this has happened to me. Then Reuben said to his father, you may kill my 2 sons if I do not bring him back to you. Put him in my hands, and I will bring him back to you, meaning Benjamin. But he said, my son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he alone is left. If harm should come to him on the journey that you are to make, you would bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to Sheol. Wow, so they're reckoning with what's about to happen here, and Jacob is lamenting the moment. Jacob's lamenting that they're even at this place. You even sense here that Jacob's laying some responsibility at their feet for Joseph being taken away, being sold into slavery. I mean, we don't know that, but here he has said, I am the one you have bereaved of children. Joseph is no more. There is a sense in which maybe Jacob has an inkling of their responsibility. Reuben also jumps in wanting to be that one to intervene again. He's that one that's tried to intervene a couple other times. And Reuben jumps in and just says, look, we got to do this. Benjamin will be like my own son. I'll take care of him. And if something happens to him, you can have my 2 sons. Now, of course, that's a deal breaker for Jacob. Jacob doesn't want to lose any more sons or grandsons. So, but it's a gesture by Reuben of, we got to do this, Dad. So, here we are in the drama. Jacob laments, and Jacob says, look, if this goes badly, you might as well, you're going to be able to see my gray hairs when I'm dead. Sheol means when I die, the place of the dead. You bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to Sheol. That's where I'm going to be. If all this goes wrong, that's where I'm going to be. Don't come back to Canaan looking for me. If all this happens, it's going to kill me. So Jacob has spent a lot of time grieving Joseph. Now he's got Simeon up in Pharaoh's jail. Now they're about to take Benjamin away. He's about to have no children around, no sons around him because of this little transaction that's got to happen. So Jacob's in a bad way. He's an old man in a bad way. But off they go because they don't really have any other choice. All right, chapter 43. Where are we on the outline here? Let's look at some of these theological questions that I mentioned earlier. So they discover the money and the grain in their bags. They're afraid that when they go back, because they got to go back, they're afraid that when they go back, they're going to be accused not only of being spies, but thieves, because the money is there that was supposed to be in exchange for the grain. They got to go back and get Simeon. Now they're taking Benjamin back with them. And they're struggling with all these theological questions. Has God done this to us? What will we do? Are we being punished? The brothers are really engaging in moral questioning, questions that we all ask ourselves at various moments in our lives. Questions like, does what goes around comes around? You know, are they getting their comeuppance, as we say in East Texas? Or is the punishment sort of fitting the crime? That is, the crime was selling Joseph into slavery, and so their punishment now is just fitting for that crime. They are reckoning with the wise, and we do this in life, don't we? We want to be able to draw a straight line between what has happened and the consequence. Oftentimes you can do that. Oftentimes you can draw a straight line between those things. Things can be linear, you know. We make a mistake and there is a consequence. Teach that with our children, don't we? We say, look, you do this and this will happen. You and I also know that we live in a complex world where you cannot always draw a straight line between difficulties and consequences. We learned that here with this virus spread, right? We live in obviously a broken world where viruses like this can run amok. But you cannot really draw a straight line here. We don't really know. I know there's a lot of banter back and forth about why this virus and so forth. And we don't have all the information on that. All is to say is there are just a lot of human examples of where you can't always draw a straight line between cause and effect. We just simply live in a world that is broken, and because of that brokenness, wherever that comes into play, there are going to be difficult things happen. The brothers are trying to figure out. They're trying to figure out the answers to the why questions, which is what we all eternally do. And so they're doing that. And the truth is, it's partially true that what goes around comes around. That does happen. It doesn't always, but it can happen. Often the punishment fits the crime. Often that consequence is directly proportional to the thing we've done. Sometimes it's not, though. Well, we're going to see Joseph provides a beautiful theological, true answer to some of these questions later on in Genesis about how God is working in the situation. So let's pick up there. We saw the We saw the laments and conversation with Jacob and the brothers, and now they've got to head back. So let's pick up, let's see, in chapter 43. Chapter 43. Now the famine was severe in the land, and when they had eaten up the grain that they had brought from Egypt, their father said to them, all right, time to go. Go again, buy a little more food. So it seems as though they kind of paused and waited in order to make this journey, and then they kind of waited till they're out of food again before they went back. But Judah said to him, Judah, a brother, one of the brothers, emerges as a spokesperson for the brothers from here on out. The man, meaning Joseph, solemnly warned us, saying, you shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. If you will send our brother with us, we will go down and buy your food. But if you will not send him, we will not go down, for the man said to us, you shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. Israel said, why did you treat me so badly as to tell the man that you had another brother? This is Jacob, remember. They replied, the man questioned us carefully about ourselves and our kindred, saying, is your father still alive? Have you another brother? What we told him was in answer to those questions. Could we in any way know that he would say, bring your brother down?